Zofia knelt on the cold, filthy garage floor, the hard surface digging into her knees. The air around her was thick with the smell of engine oil and rust. The tainted, fluorescent light flickered against the darkness, desperately trying to bring a hint of normalcy to the grim place. Her fingers trembled as she scrubbed the body of an old, battered car. She had no choice. This was what she had to do to survive. A profound fear gripped her heart every time she even considered running away again. She feared what her husband might do. In the corner of the garage, with dark circles under his eyes and his fists clenched, stood Marcus. His gaze was as hard as steel, his lips pressed into a thin line as he watched Zofia work. She knew every movement she made was being judged, every mistake would be scrutinized. Marcus could turn the smallest incident into a torrent of accusations. The words that left his mouth cut deeper than any physical blow. Failure. Stupid girl. Not worthy of my love. These phrases echoed in her mind, even as she tried to focus on her task. But Zofia was not just a victim. Beneath her broken exterior lay the soul of an artist who once painted beautiful pictures, filled with color and joy. She remembered the days when she moved a brush across the canvas with delight, creating works that expressed her emotions, her joys, and her sorrows. Those memories were now a distant dream, extinguished by the harsh reality of her daily life. Sometimes, in her darkest moments, she dreamed of returning to that world where she could truly be herself. A world where she wouldn't fear criticism, and every step would be toward fulfillment, not humiliation. Zofia, what are you doing? Marcus's voice pierced her thoughts like a fiery arrow. You're washing that car wrong again. Give it to me. He walked over to her, and Zofia felt her heart pound. Marcus leaned down to grab the brush from her hands. But instead of helping, he used the moment to humiliate her once more. You can't even wash a car properly. What a disgrace. Zofia didn't answer. She knew any word from her mouth would only infuriate him further. She merely bent her head, feeling the sting of tears in her eyes. She held them back, unwilling to give him the satisfaction of seeing her weakness. She was strong. At least, she tried to convince herself she was. Time stretched endlessly. Every minute in that garage felt like an eternity. Zofia worked, feeling the weight of Marcus's expectations upon her. When she finally finished, she looked at the ruined car, standing in stark contrast to her memories of painting. This car, this life she hadn't chosen, felt like one great failure. Suddenly, a stranger walked into the garage. He wore an elegant suit, and his posture radiated confidence. Zofia held her breath, feeling her heart begin to race. Marcus turned to him, and rage flashed in his eyes. What do you want? He asked, his voice hard as iron. The man looked at Zofia, and in his eyes, she saw something she had never experienced before. Compassion. I saw you working. Can I help with anything? A wave of hope washed over Zofia's heart, but immediately she worried if she deserved this help. She was accustomed to pain, not pity. No, it's nothing, she choked out, unable to believe that someone might want to help her. Marcus approached the intruder, his entire demeanor suggesting he wouldn't allow the man to get near Zofia. You have no business here. Step away from my wife, he snarled, his gaze steeped in hostility. The man didn't react. He simply stood there, proudly straight, utterly self-assured. His presence in the dirty garage was like a ray of sunshine in a dark cave. Zofia felt her heart beat with the rhythm of hope, with the desire to escape this terrifying life. But Marcus, seeing his control threatened, moved even closer. I won't let you destroy what we have. She doesn't need anyone to help her, especially someone like you. His voice was full of venom, which made Zofia freeze for a moment. Fear coiled around her heart like a snake again. What happened next could change everything. Zofia knew she was at a turning point, feeling an unnatural tension in the air. Her heart beat faster and faster with terror and hope. Could this strange man be her savior, or would Marcus play his final worst hand? And then, in that same moment, the garage door slammed shut with a bang. Zofia's hope began to vanish into the abyss of fear. Zofia felt the tension in the air thicken as Marcus, furious like a wild animal, tried to intimidate the intruder. Her heart pounded loudly, each pulse seeming to echo in her ears, drowning out the sounds of the garage. The man in the suit, Mark, stood still, appearing unfrightened. His cool gaze shifted from Marcus to Zofia, as if trying to understand what was happening. I'm not leaving until I'm sure this lady is all right, Mark said, his voice calm but firm. Zofia had never heard such a tone in a man's voice before. He looked like someone who knew his rights and wasn't afraid to defend them. Marcus, seeing the situation spiral out of control, moved even closer to Mark, his face purple with anger. You have no idea who you're talking to. This is my wife, so don't interfere in our business, he yelled, his voice carrying a rage that could burn everything around them. Zofia felt fear clench her stomach, but simultaneously something new sprouted in her heart. Hope. Zofia, are you all right? Mark asked, his voice softening as he looked at her. Zofia couldn't utter a word, but her eyes spoke more than any words could. Mark recognized the pain she carried, and his expression changed to one of deep compassion. She felt her heart tremble as she realized someone had seen her, someone who might be able to save her. Marcus, noticing this moment of Zofia opening up, laughed mockingly. "Oh, so now you're going to play the victim, Zofia? You think this guy will save you from reality? You're just a dirty cleaner." His words were like a blade piercing Zofia, but something in Mark's gaze started to change her inside. "You're not just a dirty cleaner," Mark stated, his tone strong and full of conviction. "Everyone deserves dignity and respect." His words were like a shot to Marcus's heart. He froze for a moment, and a shadow of uncertainty appeared in his eyes. Mark moved closer to Zofia, his presence like a shield meant to protect her. "I want to help you, Zofia. I know you might feel you don't deserve help, but that's not true. Please, give me a chance." Determination was etched on his face, and Zofia felt a wave of warmth rise in her chest. Marcus, feeling his control over the situation weakening, erupted again. "You have no business here. Step away from her, or you'll regret it." His words were full of menace, but Mark looked unperturbed. Zofia couldn't believe someone would stand up for her, and that someone could see more in her than just a victim. "I'm not moving until Zofia decides what she wants to do," Mark said, his tone cold as steel. Zofia felt her heart beat faster with every word he spoke. "You're not alone, Zofia," he added, his gaze full of care. Marcus, seeing his threats were ineffective, flew into a rage. "You have no idea who you've messed with," he screamed, his eyes burning with hatred. Zofia, sensing the growing danger, realized the situation was becoming perilous. Mark, disregarding the danger, stood upright, his posture full of confidence. "I won't leave until Zofia is safe. You might not like me, but I won't let you hurt her," Mark announced, his voice like thunder that ripped through the tension in the air. Zofia felt a new strength awaken inside her. Hope began to overshadow fear. Marcus, seeing his authority crumble, approached Zofia, his gaze filled with fury. "You are a worthless wife. Don't forget, I'm the one who gives you shelter. I wipe the mud off you." His words were like a spark that could ignite a fire. Mark, seeing Marcus closing in on Zofia, reacted instantly. "Stop!" Mark shouted, his tone resolute. Determination shone in his eyes, and Zofia could feel all his energy focused on defending her. However, at that moment, as the tension reached its peak, a loud sound came from outside the garage. The unmistakable smash of glass shattered the silence. Zofia froze, feeling that something bad was approaching. Marcus, surprised, turned toward the noise. Zofia's heart suddenly stood still. Someone was coming, and that could only mean trouble. "Someone's coming," she whispered, her voice filled with panic. Mark, sensing her terror, moved closer, ready for any reaction. Marcus hunched over, and a look of fear Zofia had never seen before appeared in his eyes. In that moment, as hope and fear intertwined, Zofia's future hung by a thread. The question of what would happen next lingered in the air like an inevitable verdict. Zofia felt her heart beat stronger and stronger. Thoughts of freedom, of the possibility of escaping Marcus, swirled in her mind. Mark, still standing in defense, radiated confidence she had never experienced before. His presence was like a light in a dark tunnel, offering hope for a better tomorrow. Yet Marcus, still furious and desperate, was not about to let his control over Zofia be destroyed. "Don't think you can just walk away," Marcus screamed, his voice like thunder tearing through the tension in the air. Zofia saw his hands trembling with anger, his eyes glittering with hatred. "You are my property, not some girl from the street." To Marcus, Zofia was merely an object he could manipulate as he pleased. Every word he spoke pierced her like another blade, but Mark stood like a wall of steel, refusing to be intimidated. "Zofia has the right to her own life, to her own choices," Mark countered. His voice carried a power that awakened hope in Zofia. "Who gave you the right to control her? You're not her master, and your boorish behavior will never be accepted." Mark was not only defending Zofia, but also confronting Marcus with a courage that made Zofia feel stronger. As Marcus began to back away, Zofia noticed something in his eyes that resembled fear. Perhaps he finally understood that his authority over her was not absolute. "Mark, I don't know what to do," Zofia said, her voice quiet, tears welling up in her eyes. "I don't know if I can trust him." Her fear was still present, but as she looked at Mark, she saw something in him that gave her courage. "I understand, Zofia," Mark replied, his gaze full of compassion. "But you are not alone. We are in this together. I know Marcus made you feel powerless, but that's not true. He's the one stripped of real power." His words were like balm to her wounds. Zofia started to believe them. Marcus, seeing the situation slipping from his grasp, exploded again. "Shut up, stranger. You have no idea what you're getting into," he screamed, his face red with fury. "If you think you can intimidate me, you are wrong." His words were full of scorn, but Mark did not flinch. I am not afraid of you, Marcus. Mark answered with determination. Zofia deserves more than what you've given her. I want to buy her freedom. These words were like a lightning bolt, illuminating the darkness of the garage. Zofia felt her heart tremble with terror, yet also with hope. Buy? You think you can just buy someone who is your wife? Marcus sneered, his laughter full of mockery. You have no idea what it means to be in a relationship. This isn't a fairy tale. Zofia felt Marcus's anger mounting. His words struck her mercilessly like blows. Everyone deserves a choice, Marcus, Mark said with conviction. Even Zofia, and you have no right to take that possibility away from her. If you don't let her go, the person who can help her will find you. Mark approached Marcus, their gazes meeting. Zofia could feel the tension between them. It was a duel not only of words, but of spirit. Marcus, seeing he no longer had control, started to back away. Don't think you can end this so easily. You'll regret interfering. His voice was quiet, but Zofia sensed a threat hidden beneath the words. Mark, ignoring the danger, turned to Zofia. What do you want to do, Zofia? He asked, his eyes full of resolve. Do you want to be free? Zofia looked into his eyes, seeing genuine care there. She nodded bravely, and hope settled in her heart. However, in that very instant, the garage door burst open with a crash, and a familiar shadow stood in the doorway. It was Anne, Zofia's friend, who had always been there for her during tough times. Zofia, what's going on? Her voice was full of panic, and tears glistened in her eyes. Marcus turned abruptly. Zofia felt her heart stop. Now that Anne had appeared, would everything become complicated? Mark instantly noticed the change in atmosphere and addressed Anne. You need to get Zofia out of here, he said, his voice urgent. Marcus, still enraged, glared at them. You have no business here. Get out, he shouted. It was clear in his eyes that he was ready to fight. Zofia, sensing the rising tension, knew they had to act fast. Every second could be crucial. Thoughts swirled in her mind about what might happen if Marcus wasn't stopped. Zofia, come on, we have to go. Anne grabbed her hand. Zofia felt this might be their only chance to escape. Mark stood nearby, ready to fight. But Zofia knew they had to make a decision. The tension mounted with every moment. Zofia faced a choice that could change her life forever. Would she choose to flee with Anne, or stay to confront Marcus? Time was pressing, and the decision was in her hands. Zofia felt her heart beating faster and faster. With Mark standing beside her, radiating certainty and strength, Zofia felt Marcus's anger giving way to new emotions. Fear, but also hope. Marcus, still furious, was retreating, his gaze full of hatred. He closed his eyes to everything that was happening. It was as if he still had power over the situation, as if he could simply turn around and return to his old life, where Zofia was merely his property. Zofia, come with me, Mark said, his voice a gentle whisper that scattered the darkness in her mind. Zofia looked at him with uncertainty. Fear about what she was about to do took hold of her soul. On one hand, she longed for freedom, but on the other, she was afraid Marcus wouldn't let her go without consequences. Mark noticed her hesitation. Don't be afraid, Zofia. You're safe with me. I promise I will help you. When Zofia finally nodded, she felt an enormous weight lift from her. Mark took her hand, leading her toward the garage exit. Each step was like stepping out of a dark tunnel for her. The light outside seemed so bright that she had to squint. When they got outside, Zofia froze. She stood before Mark's luxurious car, gleaming in the morning sun. This is my car. Get in. I'll take you somewhere you can feel safe, Mark said, his voice full of warmth. Zofia sank into the soft seat. The scent of leather reminded her of old times, when she thought life could be different. The road led through beautiful green areas, and with every passing moment, Zofia felt her heart opening up. Mark, looking at her, smiled. There was something in his eyes that made her feel important. This is my home, he said as they stopped in front of a massive villa. Zofia looked at the building with admiration. It was huge, with a beautiful garden where colorful flowers bloomed. When they went inside, Zofia was stunned. The interior was elegant, with high ceilings and modern furniture. Mark handed her a towel as he led her to the bathroom. Take a shower. I want you to feel comfortable. You have the right to relax. Zofia, feeling the warm stream of water flowing over her body, couldn't believe this was real. She was in a place she couldn't even have imagined. After years of dirt and humiliation, she could now feel like a lady. When she came out of the bathroom, Mark was waiting for her with a plate full of fresh fruit. Eat. You need to feel well, he said, his voice like balm to her soul. Zofia looked at the food and her stomach rumbled. She had eaten next to nothing for the past few days. However, as she ate the fruit, uncertainty arose in her heart. Why are you doing this? She asked, still unable to believe what was happening. Mark, surprised by the question, looked her in the eyes. Because you deserve to be happy. No one should live in fear, he replied, his voice sincere. Despite this, Zofia couldn't shake the feeling that it was all too good to be true. She had been through hell, and now suddenly she was supposed to be happy? It seemed impossible. Images of Marcus, his anger, his manipulation appeared in her mind. With every passing moment, she felt the floor beneath her feet becoming less stable. Soon, Mark noticed her unease. "What's wrong, Zofia?" he asked, his face showing concern. "I don't know if I can believe this," she replied, her voice trembling. "Can I really stay here? Is this only temporary? And what about Marcus?" Mark moved closer, placing a hand on her shoulder. "Don't worry, Marcus no longer has any power. I won't let him hurt you," he said firmly. But Zofia felt her heart was still in bondage. At that moment, a loud sound of the doorbell rang out. Zofia froze. Mark, noticing her reaction, quickly headed toward the door. "Stay here," he said, a note of anxiety in his voice. Zofia heard Mark open the door, and her heart began to beat even faster. Who could it be? Suddenly, she heard a loud voice outside the door. "Mark, open up! It's important!" Zofia recognized the voice. It was Marcus's voice. Panic seized her heart. What was he doing here? Had he come back to take her away? Zofia felt a cold shiver run through her body. Mark still stood by the door, uncertain what to do. "I'll stay with you, Zofia," he said. His determination was like a shield, but Zofia felt that everything they had built in this short time could collapse in an instant. Marcus was right outside the door, and fear swelled in her heart about what might happen. Zofia stood in the elegant bathroom, still overwhelmed by the change in her life. The warm water was still running over her body. Her mind floated between reality and a dream. When she looked in the mirror, she saw not only her reflection, but also her hopes and fears. With a new, clean towel wrapped around her body, she felt the weight of years of humiliation roll off her. Every drop of water that dripped onto the floor seemed like a symbol of her old life, which was slowly fading away. Mark waited for her in the living room. His posture radiated calm and strength. Zofia felt like an intruder, overwhelmed by the luxury and elegance surrounding her. She could hardly believe she was in this beautiful house, away from Marcus. Mark noticed her uncertainty. "Do you want something to eat?" he asked, his voice containing a warmth that soothed her nervous heart. Zofia nodded, though her stomach was still full of doubt. Mark led her to the dining room, where bowls filled with fruit, fresh bread, and juicy vegetables stood on the table. It seemed everything here was designed to make her happy. She saw colorful fruits that hadn't graced her table in so long. Their scent was like music to her. She picked up an apple, but as she brought it to her mouth, doubts began to weave in her mind. "Do I deserve this?" she thought, feeling a wave of fear wash over her. Marcus, his insults, his violence, all of it was still with her, like a shadow she couldn't shake. With every bite of fruit she ate, she felt the memories returning to her. Mark, seeing her anxiety, approached and placed a hand on her shoulder. "Zofia, all of this is for you. I want you to feel well. You don't have to be afraid," he said, a strength in his voice that gave her hope. "But what about Marcus?" she asked, unable to hold back the tears that began to fill her eyes. "He won't let me go. He won't let me be happy." Mark looked her in the eyes, his expression softening. "Understand, Marcus no longer has power over you. You are free, Zofia. I won't let him hurt you," he promised. His words were like balm for her soul, yet Zofia still couldn't believe what she was hearing. The past held her in its claws. Every moment of happiness seemed unattainable. As they ate, Mark told her about his life, his work as a lawyer, the cases he handled, the people he defended. Zofia listened with fascination, but thoughts still swirled in her mind. How was it possible that someone like Mark, so respected and successful, would choose to help her? What motivated him? Given her past experience, full of fear and pain, Zofia couldn't believe the sincerity of his intentions. Suddenly, a shadow appeared in the kitchen doorway. Zofia glanced over, and her heart stood still. It was Marcus. He stood in the doorway, his face full of anger. His eyes were filled with hatred and determination. Zofia felt all her hope suddenly vanish. Mark stood to the side, his posture indicating he was ready to defend her. "Well, what are you doing here?" Mark asked coldly. Marcus smiled, but it was a smile that carried no joy. "I came for my wife. Zofia, come home with me. You have no idea who you're dealing with," he said, his voice hard and unyielding. Zofia trembled, feeling her entire reality waver again. "I'm not coming back with you," she replied, but her voice shook. Mark stood beside her. His presence gave her strength, but she felt fear in her heart. Marcus moved closer to them, his eyes glittering with fury. "Don't think you can just walk away. You know what I can do to you," he threatened. Zofia felt the blood drain from her face. "Zofia, don't be afraid," Mark said. But Zofia felt fear paralyzing her. Marcus was like a storm approaching their peaceful world. She didn't know what the future would bring. She felt that what they had built could crumble in a moment. I'll be back for you soon, Marcus added before disappearing from their sight, leaving behind a heavy atmosphere of unease. Zofia felt her heart pounding in a frantic rhythm. This was the moment when everything could change. Was Mark capable of protecting her? Could she finally believe she deserved safety? She herself wasn't sure, but one thing was clear. She couldn't go back to Marcus. She had to face what was coming. This was the moment when everything collapsed and the future became uncertain. Zofia stood by the table, apple in hand, feeling uncertain when Marcus entered the kitchen. His presence immediately brought a cold blast of fear. She felt her heart race and blood pulse in her temples. Mark, standing beside her, radiated strength, but Zofia knew Marcus was like a shadow that had always held her in a grip of fear. Marcus approached, his eyes burning with anger. "Don't think you can just walk away, Zofia," he said, his voice hard as steel. "You have to come home to me." Zofia trembled, hearing these words. "I'm not coming back with you," she replied, but fear shot through her body. Marcus was closing in, and she knew his anger could be unpredictable. Mark stood slightly closer, as if to shield her with his body. "Zofia is free, Marcus," Mark said, his voice calm, but Zofia could sense the tension in the air. Marcus smiled, but it was a smile that promised nothing good. "Free." She felt his words fill her with dread. "Zofia, everyone knows you have mental issues. Do you want someone who doesn't really know what it means to be responsible to believe you?" His voice was like a thin, icy knife, stabbing at her self-confidence. Zofia felt doubts swirl in her mind. "Am I really normal? Is what I feel real?" she wondered, and anxiety arose in her heart. Mark looked at her with concern in his eyes. "Zofia, that's not true. You are strong. Don't let these lies destroy you," he said. His words were like a light in a dark tunnel, giving her hope. Marcus, seeing Zofia hesitate, reached out his hand toward her. "See, Zofia, he has no idea what it's like to be responsible for someone. He's not your husband." His tone was full of contempt, and Zofia felt her soul screaming in pain. "But what if it's true?" she thought, and her heart began to beat faster. "You don't have to have anything to do with him," Mark added, a shade of determination in his voice. Zofia looked at him, her eyes filling with tears. "But he won't let me leave. He won't let me be happy," she replied, her voice filled with despair. Marcus laughed, but it was a laugh that seemed full of hatred. "We'll see what you do when I'm around. You're nobody without me." Marcus's words stabbed her like a dagger. Zofia felt all her hope disappearing. Mark, seeing her suffering, moved even closer, his hand resting on her back. "No one has the right to hurt you. If you need to, I can protect you. Don't be afraid." But Marcus, seeing their closeness, reacted with anger. "Don't think you can protect her. You know who I am. How can you think I won't find you?" His voice was full of fury, and Zofia felt fear paralyzing her body. Thoughts swirled in her mind, and dread took control. What if Mark can't defend me? What if Marcus is right? Suddenly, Mark pulled out his phone. "I'm calling for help right now," he said, and Zofia felt a flicker of hope appear in her heart. Marcus, seeing his move, froze. "You wouldn't dare do that," he threatened, his eyes glittering with fury. Zofia trembled as she realized how close they were to disaster. Mark looked up, determination in his eyes. "Zofia, stand with me. Don't let him intimidate you," he said, his voice strong as steel. Marcus, seeing their certainty, started to back away. "You'll regret this. I won't leave you alone," he shouted before turning and running out of the kitchen, leaving Zofia with Mark. Zofia stood stunned, feeling adrenaline surge through her veins. "Is this the end? Can I really be free?" she thought, her heart beating to the rhythm of hope and fear. Mark walked up to her, his gaze full of concern. "Zofia, we need to talk about what we'll do now. We can't let Marcus destroy you," he said, his voice like balm for her soul. As Zofia listened to his words, she felt determination growing within her. "I won't let him destroy me. I can't go back to that life." However, fear still lingered in her heart. What would Marcus do when he found out where she was? How far would he go to get her back? Zofia knew this wasn't the end. Her new freedom was only an illusion. Soon, she felt a storm approaching, and she was right in the eye of it. In that moment, as Zofia and Mark closed the door, they heard a loud bang. Zofia froze, and Mark immediately turned around. "What was that?" he asked, anxiety in his eyes. Zofia understood that Marcus was not going to give up. What should have been a moment of peace turned into a moment full of dread. "Danger is near," she thought, and her heart began to beat even faster. Mark, noticing her distress, grabbed her hand. "We need to find a safe place. Now." Zofia, feeling his certainty, nodded, but doubts swirled in her mind. Marcus wouldn't let go. What would happen if he managed to reach them? In the middle of this new reality, Zofia felt the past beginning to haunt her again, but before they could react, the kitchen door burst open with a bang. Marcus stood in the doorway, fury in his eyes and a menacing smile on his face. "You didn't think you could escape me so easily?" he said, his voice full of hatred. Zofia's heart stood still. Mark stood in front of her, ready to fight in her defense. "I won't let you hurt her," he said, determination in his eyes. Zofia trembled, feeling fear engulf her body. She knew a storm was coming, and she had to be ready for what was about to happen. In that moment, she realized she was fighting not only for her life, but also for her soul. Would she manage to free herself from Marcus, or would she become his victim once more? Zofia closed her eyes. Thoughts of freedom, love, and hope swirled in her mind. "I can't give up," she thought, and a light ignited in her heart. Hope was the last thing that could save her. But would it be enough to face what was coming? Zofia stood in silence, staring at the door through which Marcus had just fled. His words still echoed in her ears, refusing to disappear. Her breathing felt ragged. Her heart still pounded in a frantic rhythm, as if trying to escape the cage in which it had been trapped for so long. Mark stood beside her, his presence like a shield, protecting her from what might happen. "Zofia," Mark said, his voice quiet but full of determination, "you need to know that Marcus has no right to persecute you. What he was doing to you isn't love. It's tyranny." Zofia looked at him, tears welling up in her eyes. "But he is my husband. How can I just leave him?" she asked, uncertainty in her voice. She felt her heart still beating to the rhythm of fear, and thoughts tumbled through her head. "You can't treat him like a husband if he doesn't treat you like a wife," Mark replied, his gaze full of compassion. "Zofia, you deserve respect and love. No one has the right to hurt you." Mark's words were like a cold shower for Zofia. They reminded her how long she had lived in fear, how many times Marcus had crossed boundaries that should have been inviolable. "But he has his ways. He always manages to intimidate me. What if he comes back? What if—" she began, but Mark interrupted her. "Don't think about that, Zofia. Now you need to focus on yourself. You have to trust that you are in a safe place now. Marcus isn't here. You are free here," Mark said. His hand rested gently on her shoulder, giving her a little comfort. Zofia felt the weight she had carried for years beginning to slide off. She looked at Mark, seeing something in his eyes that had previously seemed unattainable. True concern. Concern that wasn't connected to manipulation or fear, but to a desire to protect and support. "Can I truly be free?" she thought, and hope began to sprout in her heart. At that moment, they heard a noise outside the door. Zofia instantly froze. Mark pulled her closer to him. "Don't worry. It's just outside sounds," he said. But tension was audible in his voice. "It could be relatives, neighbors. We need to be careful." Zofia felt panic rising in her chest. "What if Marcus comes back? What if he wants to take me away from here?" she asked, her voice trembling. Mark looked at her, determination in his eyes. "I won't let that happen. You're safe, I promise." Zofia trembled, feeling adrenaline surge through her veins again. "But what should I do? How can I be sure that this isn't just temporary peace?" she asked, doubts mounting in her heart. "You have to trust me. Together, we will find a way for Marcus to stop persecuting you. I will handle the rest," Mark said, his tone full of certainty. Zofia wanted to believe him, but thoughts of the past swirled in her mind. All those times Marcus promised he would change, only to return to his old, cruel habits. Suddenly, a man who looked like a guard or security officer entered the kitchen. "Mr. Mark, we have a problem," he said, his face serious. Zofia felt her heart start beating faster again. "What's happening?" Mark asked, his voice hard as steel. "It's been reported that Marcus is in the vicinity. He was seen nearby," the man replied. Zofia felt everything around her begin to fall apart. Fear engulfed her body and panic arose in her heart. "He can't find me. He can't," she thought. Her mind filled with images of Marcus returning to take everything away from her. Mark looked at Zofia, a shadow of concern in his eyes. "We need to act fast. We can't give him a chance." "Zofia, trust me," he said. Zofia noticed the determination in his eyes that she hadn't seen before. "But what will we do?" she asked, panic in her voice. Mark didn't answer right away, and tension filled the air. Zofia felt her heart pounding in a frantic rhythm. Every sound seemed like a prelude to disaster. At that moment, when the panicked thought of Marcus filled her mind, Mark pulled her closer. "Zofia, we are in this together. I won't leave you. But you must be strong. You have to believe you can face this fear," he said, his voice like balm to her wounded soul. Zofia nodded, feeling a spark of courage ignite in her heart. "All right, let's do it," she said, a new resolve in her voice. She knew there was no other way. She had to confront Marcus, but not alone. Together with Mark, she could try to take back her life. Suddenly, the kitchen door burst open with a crash. Marcus stood in the doorway, his eyes burning with anger. "Zofia, where are you?" he shouted. His voice sounded like thunder tearing through the silence. Zofia froze, feeling fear wrap around her again like a heavy blanket. This is the end, she thought, and darkness settled in her heart. Mark stood in front of her, his posture hard as steel. "You are not taking her, Marcus. Your tyranny is over. Zofia, stand with me," he said. The certainty in his voice was like a light in a dark tunnel. Zofia understood that this moment would decide everything. She had to find the strength within her not to let Marcus win. She had to risk everything to be free. Zofia stood in the kitchen, her heart still pounding frantically, as Mark, with determination in his eyes, tried to calm the situation. The fear that engulfed her body felt palpable, like a shadow constantly chasing her. "Marcus can't find you," Mark repeated, his voice hard. Yet Zofia felt that uncertainty was also hidden in his words. Suddenly, the sound of the doorbell rang out. Zofia froze. Mark immediately went to the window to check who was outside. Zofia felt adrenaline surge through her veins again. "Who could it be?" she asked, panic in her voice. Mark looked at her, a shadow of worry in his eyes. "I don't know, but we have to be careful." Zofia couldn't shake the thought that Marcus might be just around the corner, ready to destroy what they had built. "What if it's him?" "Are you?" she asked, her voice trembling. Mark approached her, his presence like a lighthouse in the dark night. "I won't let him hurt you. You're safe here, and I'll handle this," he said, his tone full of certainty. Zofia felt her heart fill with hope, but she quickly remembered how many times Marcus had promised to change, only to return to his old, cruel habits. Her thoughts were like an endless spiral as Mark went downstairs to open the door. Zofia stood in the kitchen, praying it wouldn't be the face she feared. When Mark opened the door, Zofia heard a man's voice she didn't recognize, but it sounded familiar. "I'm looking for Zofia. Marcus sent me," he said. Zofia felt her heart sink. "Don't open it!" she cried, but it was too late. Mark was already standing in the doorway, and Zofia saw the man step inside, his eyes full of cold determination. "What are you doing here?" Mark asked, his voice full of tension. Zofia felt fear and anger mixing inside her as the man smiled, his face a mask of deceit. "Marcus wants you to come back. You can't hide. He won't let up," he said. Zofia knew this wasn't just a threat, it was a promise. "I won't go back to him," Zofia replied, her voice quiet but full of determination. The man looked at her with contempt. "You think you have a choice? He always finds you. What he did was just the beginning." "Marcus won't let you escape," he said, and Zofia felt darkness beginning to envelop her again. Mark, seeing Zofia shaking with fear, decided to act. "You will not intimidate her," he said, his voice hard as steel. "Zofia, don't listen to him. You're free and he has no power over you." Zofia looked at Mark, seeing determination in his eyes that gave her courage. "You don't know who you're dealing with," the man replied, his tone full of scorn. "Marcus has his ways. You know you can't hide forever." Zofia felt fear start to overwhelm her again, but Mark grabbed her hand as if to give her strength. "We won't let him," Mark said, his gaze full of resolve. "Trust me, Zofia. Together we will find a way to stop him." Hope sparked within Zofia, but thoughts of Marcus still swirled in her mind. The man, seeing their determination, smiled maliciously. "There's no point in resisting. Marcus always wins. You can be sure this isn't the end. He won't let up until he finds you," he said. Zofia felt darkness beginning to envelop her again. Mark looked at Zofia, a shadow of worry in his eyes. "We need to act fast. We can't give him a chance," he said. Zofia felt determination rising in her heart. "What will we do?" she asked, panic in her voice. "We need to find a way for Marcus to stop persecuting you. Maybe we need legal help. Maybe there are some protections we can take," Mark replied, his tone full of certainty. Zofia felt determination sprouting within her, but doubt still lingered in her heart. "And what if that's not enough? What if he finds me?" she asked, tears welling up in her eyes. Mark approached her, his hands gently holding her shoulders. "I won't let that happen. You're safe, I promise," he said. Zofia felt the weight she had carried for years beginning to slide off. Suddenly, the sound of a phone ringing broke the air. Mark looked at Zofia with alarm. "It might be important," he said. Zofia felt her heart quicken again. Mark answered the phone. After a moment, his face turned pale. It's Marcus," he said. Zofia felt fear engulf her again. "What does he want?" she asked, panic in her voice. Mark looked at her, a shadow of worry in his eyes. "He says he knows where you are, that he intends to find you," he said. Zofia felt everything around her beginning to fall apart. "He can't find me. He can't," she thought. Her mind filled with images of Marcus returning to take everything away from her. Mark looked at Zofia, determination in his eyes. "We have to act now. We can't give him a chance," he said. Zofia felt fear rise in her heart, but also determination. "I won't let him take away my freedom," she thought. And the idea of a fight sprouted in her mind. Zofia knew this wasn't the end. It was just the beginning of a new fight. She had to confront the past and fight for her future. In that moment, Zofia realized she wasn't alone. Mark was with her, ready to support her. Together they could face Marcus and his threats. But would that be enough to defeat the demons of the past? Zofia looked at Mark, determination growing in her heart. "I won't give up," she whispered, hope shining in her eyes. This was a fight for her life, for her freedom. She knew she had to fight, even if she wasn't sure what the future would bring. But in this moment, as the doorbell rang again in the silence, Zofia felt that this was only the beginning. She waited for what fate would bring, ready to face all challenges. Together with Mark, she carried the hope for a better tomorrow in her heart.